Welcome back to Healthcare Insight on America's Web Radio. We've been talking about ObamaCare and a new approach to changing the market entirely to using free market health insurance, using what I've called MAGA health. I hope that gets some people's attention, some curiosity, but let's dive deeper into the why of MAGA health. We mentioned before that Obamacare is suffering from the premium death spiral, the actuarial death spiral, as we call it. Well, we just talked about self-insurance in the last segment and how self-insurance is being used down to groups as few as 2 lives. Well, that's almost unheard of. When I first got into this business many years ago, you had to have 1,000 employees in order for the employer to take on the responsibility of health claims, with the insurance company acting only as an administrator, not as a backstop. For if claims got very high, then the insurance company was doing the pooling of many employers to level out the risk. Well, these new products that have developed because of Obamacare's craziness are known as level premium plans. So if you're an employer with a young, healthy group that can go through some basic underwriting risk selection process, the group can avoid a lot of Obamacare. The underwriting process, which is eliminated under Obamacare for fully insured plans under a traditional approach of insurance, is still allowed if you're self-insured. And the reinsurance companies that are providing these protections for large individual employee claims or large family member claims to these groups as low as 2 lives, they're allowed to ask questions. So that if somebody is really unhealthy, has got a pre-existing condition, then those level premium plans wouldn't have to accept you. So you stay in Obamacare, so only the healthy lives are sort of moving out. So with these new financing and plan designs, employer-sponsored coverages have kind of morphed into a combination of reinsurance products that mimic self-insurance close enough to qualify for the exemption from Obamacare. Obamacare folks putting together that regulation really didn't understand the difference between insurance and reinsurance. Insurance is sort of the frontline insurance company. Aetna, Cigna, United, Blue Cross, they provide insurance. But when you're going self-insured, as large employers have been doing for many decades, you can get the protection against individuals having large claims or even your entire group having a very bad year. Those protections are referred to as reinsurance, not insurance, but reinsurance. Many of you may be familiar with the company name Lloyd's of London, which is sort of the famous reinsurance company that would take on high-risk accounts. Very different than insurance, which again is the frontline insurance company. So if you push the frontline insurance companies to the side and you use them only as administrators, you can then contract with reinsurance companies like Lloyd's of London, and that makes you a self-insured plan. So if an employer-sponsored group later experiences high claims, that group can simply shift from guaranteed coverage for pre-existing conditions under Obamacare. In other words, if you go to these level premium plans, you're a small group and you become self-insured and avoid much of Obamacare, but then later on you have horrifically high claims, your reinsurance premiums will go up and maybe make it unsustainable to stay as a self-insured plan. Well, what do you do then? You've gone to self-insured to avoid Obamacare. Now you've got very high claims. Well, the avenue that they take is to go back to Obamacare, which has got some government subsidies, or to go back and remove insurance entirely and have the individual members of your small group have to go to the exchanges would get government subsidized care. Well, that means only the worst cases are staying in Obamacare. Only the worst cases are coming back to Obamacare. All that, along with removing that individual mandate premium, is what's causing Obamacare to die. It is at the end stages. There's not much longer. So the healthy individuals and groups are opting out of Obamacare, and the less healthy ones are left accumulating in or returning to Obamacare. This leads to Obamacare's higher and higher premiums that we're going to see over the next several years. And we've already seen over the last few. In the actuarial world, this is known as a premium death spiral. So we're now beyond repeal and replace. We can't just repeal without having a replacement that is substantially different, that provides for free market private health insurance. The Republican challenge is no longer, let me make it clear, is no longer just to repeal and replace Obamacare. We are beyond that point of no return. We are beyond the Tea Party opposition to government control of healthcare. We are beyond the anger of the 2010 to 2016 elections and the lie that if you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you want to keep insurance, you can keep your insurance. We are beyond the lie that the Affordable Care Act will reduce premiums by $2,500 per family. What a bunch of hokey that was sold to the American public by our very highest elected officials, including President Obama. Most Americans are now facing the dire prospect of a failed Obamacare with no acceptable alternative. Americans are worried that under a Republican plan, they will not be covered for pre-existing conditions. That is totally false if we can just get Republicans to coalesce around the concepts of MAGA health. Republicans will be blamed when all this failure comes to pass. Republicans must face the reality that Obamacare is finally dying of its own inherent flaws and inadequacies, and Republicans will be blamed by the media for failing. They will say Republicans failed to address the issues to improve Obamacare, and they never offered a viable alternative. Unfortunately, there's some truth to these accusations. Since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, in 2010, Republicans have been long on slogans and general concepts, and too short on specifics for a plan to repeal and replace Obamacare. The last attempt to repeal Obamacare in 2017 failed mainly because Republicans in control at the time of both the House and the Senate failed to develop a plan through regular legislative order. A small group of legislators unveiled a plan without committee debate or open public discussion. Senator John McCain objected to the process and cast a killing no vote with his famous thumbs down. To pass any bill, Republicans must listen to the American public, develop a common vision, have a specific plan, debate it openly, and structure legislation and regulations that create a private market alternative to the Affordable Care Act. That's what MAGA Health will do as a starting point. I'm not saying MAGA Health and everything we're describing here is the final answer that should come out. What I am saying is that it is a basis on which Republicans can build, and they can modify, they can change, they can listen to public debate, they can have input from across the political aisle. All those things can be done to improve the concepts that we're talking about. I'm not smart enough to have all the answers. I've got a framework that I've developed with Republicans in the past, with Newt Gingrich, with Paul Ryan, with other elected officials in Washington. I've just kind of put it all together at this point in time because it's now time to actually make the changes that are needed. So to avoid that inevitable blame game and the coming vacuum for affordable coverage, Republicans need to pass legislation and regulations establishing a viable private health insurance market that includes the publicly supported positives of Obamacare, that is, things like guaranteed issue, coverage of pre-existing conditions, and coverage of children to age 26. The Republican challenge is clear. Establish a private insurance system that provides a viable individual market and expands employer-sponsored health insurance, especially for the 50 and fewer fully insured employer-sponsored groups. The main need for this reform, keep in mind, Obamacare was mainly about insurance reform, not about health care reform. The main need for insurance reform is creating a viable private market for affordable, fully insured small groups, generally under 50 lives, and individual policies. So what are the takeaways from this segment? Let's just give a summary because this is so important. Plan members have a 93% satisfaction rate with employer-sponsored health insurance. The linchpin, individual mandate, has failed and in 2019 was removed from the law. Employers are avoiding much of the burdensome Affordable Care Act mandates by self-insuring as low as 2 lives. Obamacare is in an actuarial death spiral, and the ACA is beyond repeal and replace. The dying of Obamacare will be blamed on Republicans. There is no doubt about that at this point. It is going to happen, and elected officials better be prepared, and that's what MAGA Health is all about. So as we begin to move into the next section, we're going to get into the weeds. I know some of you have been wanting to get into the weeds for the last several sections, but it's really important to create that foundation of understanding, that call to action to try to motivate both ourselves and our elected officials to do something different and to do it now. It has to be done now. We can't wait till after the 2020 election. So we're going to talk in this next segment about what is MAGA Health and how does it work specifically? How do we go forward with the concept of MAGA Health? Well, I'll just give you a preview. There's an old Wendy's hamburger commercial that famously asked, "Where's the beef?" Well, next, what we're going to do is answer that question with regards to MAGA Health. So let's take our next commercial, and we'll get back to Healthcare Insights on this terrific platform called America's Web Radio. If you want more information on this or other programs, go to americaswebradio.com and you'll find all sorts of information about health care reform, health insurance reform, and obviously segments of this program going back to its very beginning a couple weeks ago, Healthcare Insights. Look forward to your thoughts and comments, and we'll see you back here for the next segment of Healthcare Insights.